All right, let's get into it. Today we're going to be breaking down a very specific, very twisted kind of storytelling, dark humor. We're going to see how you can take something totally innocent, something pure, and flip it into something, well, something a lot more sinister. Time to start the breakdown.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. We've all seen them, those viral videos, the little feel-good news stories that pop up in your feed. You know, a cat and a bird who are best friends, a story about someone paying for a stranger's coffee, all that stuff. They're like little daily reminders that, hey, maybe the world isn't a total dumpster fire after all. But what if that's a completely naive way of looking at the world? What if, hiding just underneath that wholesome, sugary, sweet surface, there's a darker, funnier, and let's be honest, a way more believable story going on? Today, we're going to look closer. We are breaking down the breakdown. Okay, our first case study, this one takes us to Sydney, Australia. You might have even seen the headlines for this one. A family's boat gets into some serious trouble, and a nearby group of nudists comes to save the day. Sounds like a perfect, quirky, feel-good story, right? Or is it? So the version of the story everyone ran with is simple, it's sweet, you've got stranded boaters, a real moment of danger, and then these selfless heroes who prove you don't need clothes to be a good person. It's beautiful, a real testament to humanity. And here's where the whole narrative just completely flips on its head. We're told to look closer, to look at the key piece of evidence, the mother's face. The argument here is that her expression, that is not relief, not even close. That is pure, unfiltered terror. The kind of terror you feel when you realize you've just made a horrible, horrible mistake. So let's put these two stories side by side. In one column, you have a selfless rescue. In the other, you have what the source calls an acquisition by a coastal flesh cult. See, the boat wasn't being saved, it was being dragged to their territory. And that family, they weren't rescued, they were harvested. It's a complete 180-degree flip of the entire story. And that, right there, brings us to our first technique, reframing. It's super simple. You take all the facts of a story that everyone agrees on, but you present them through a completely different, much darker lens. The humor, the punchline, comes from that shock of seeing something familiar suddenly become really, really menacing. All right, let's jump to our next example and see how this whole thing builds. We are now traveling all the way to Barnaul, Siberia, for a political story that the internet absolutely fell in love with. And it features a very, very handsome Scottish fold cat named Barsic. So the official story is honestly pretty charming. The people there were just sick and tired of corrupt human politicians. So in an online poll for mayor, they overwhelmingly voted for a cat as a protest. It's a perfect little symbol of people being fed up and wanting literally anything else. And here's where that reframing comes in again, this time with the campaign slogan. On the surface, it's cute, right? Only mice don't vote for Barsic. But in this new, dark interpretation, that's not a slogan. Oh no, it's a threat. A threat from the Siberian cat mafia. Barsic isn't some protest candidate. He's a figurehead for a massive criminal organization. This wasn't an election. It was a silent, fluffy coup. And this just perfectly illustrates our second technique, absurdist escalation. You start with a totally silly premise, a cat for mayor, and you just push it to its most extreme conclusion. What would a cat mayor really mean? Well, obviously, it would mean a cat mafia, total suppression of the rodent population. You get the idea. The comedy is all in the commitment to that absurd idea. Okay, for our final case, we are looking at a piece of viral content that came out of Bangalore, India. It was an AI-generated game concept that pretty much took over the internet for a while. So a tech worker creates this thing called Grand Theft Autorickshaw, and it's this hilarious, totally chaotic vision of the city's insane traffic, but imagined as a video game. Everybody laughed, they shared it, they all saw it for what it was, a really clever, funny joke about everyday life. But according to this darker worldview, the internet was dead wrong. This was never a game. It was a proposal for something way, way more serious. See, it gets reframed as a hyper-realistic training simulator for the coming traffic wars. The AI isn't just making funny pictures. No, it's optimizing routes of aggression. It's calculating the best way to intimidate pedestrians, how to weaponize potholes for maximum effect. This isn't a game. It's field training for a new kind of urban warfare. And this shows off our last technique, sinister realism. This is where you take something that's totally fictional and you just treat it with this deadly seriousness. You layer it with all these plausible, really dark details until the joke starts to feel, well, uncomfortably real. So, okay, we've seen reframing, we've seen absurdist escalation, and we've seen sinister realism. But that leaves us with the biggest question of all. Why does any of this work? Why do we find it funny to turn a rescue into a harvest or a cute cat into a mob boss? So, why does this kind of humor hit so hard? Well, it actually taps into some pretty powerful stuff. For one, it gives us a sense of control in a world that feels totally chaotic. If you can laugh at the darkness, it doesn't feel so powerful. It also lets us deal with subjects that are usually scary or taboo, but in a safe way. And, at its core, this humor just admits that modern life is often completely absurd. It tells us we're not crazy for thinking things don't make sense. And maybe most importantly, it connects us. Laughing at this stuff creates this weird bond with other people who see the exact same cracks in reality that you do. And maybe, in the end, this kind of dark humor is just the most honest way we have to cope. I think it's all summed up perfectly by this one last chilling thought that doesn't really give us any easy answers. The world isn't getting better, it's just getting weirder. And you're probably next.